This week on Case Studies with the Biz Doc, it's AWS, the IT Cloud Services division of Amazon. We're going to talk about the history, where they're going, just how dominant they are. Check it out. AWS. It stands for Amazon Web Services, and it is a very significant part of Amazon. As a matter of fact, it's about 65% of their profits, and I'm going to take you on the journey of how they got there. How this one division is suddenly 65% of the profits and not near that percent of the revenue. Let's go back to the beginning. Amazon, as you know, was a bookseller. Then they were an everything seller, and now they're third-party stores and everything on top of it. Well, that takes a lot of IT infrastructure to make that happen. And back here in about 2004 and 5, Amazon was sitting down thinking. Think actually was the original motto that IBM would put out on people's desks. He had a little sign that said, think, like think about solutions. And I'm going to show you that IBM has really kind of slid down. That's a little sidebar in this case study. But right now, they were all thinking. And we have people in our organization that are trying to build products and trying to build things. There's all kinds of things going on. Third-party stores, Amazon stores, the bookstore, the Kindle store, video, music. We all saw all those services come out, and that takes IT. Well, inside Amazon, they said, you know what we figured out? People are spending 70% of their time on IT and infrastructure for their product, and only 30% of the time on the customer. And if you've ever read any of Jeff Bezos' quarterly reports, you'll know that his number one focus in life is the customer, you and me. I once rented an Amazon video, and I noticed that halfway through it, it was jittering. And then I had to restart it, and then it jittered again, and finally it played all the way through. I actually got an email. This is a system email, so it was automated, and it says, we observed that you had playback issues while you were watching this video. It was a movie from Amazon Video. It says, this has been provided to you for free. So the $3.99 I was paying, I didn't pay. That is one example that just I had of how Amazon obsesses about the customer experience. And yeah, they put the pressure on the third-party stores and stuff, and people criticize them for that. But what you can't criticize them for is from the very beginning, Jeff Bezos has had a focus on the customer. Well, when they discovered that inside, the customer wasn't getting as much of the focus as IT was, although to make new products, you do need IT systems. You have to invent. You have to build the capability to do it once and then scale it for as many customers as you have. Recall in the Disney Plus case study just last week, and you should go check that one out. It's right here, but not right now. Disney Plus had 10 million subscribers on day one. Blew away every estimate they have, and so they had a bunch of hiccups. That's exactly the kind of thing that would drive Jeff Bezos nuts. So he was always focused on, yes, build the IT platform, make it scalable, plan for success, but to be only 30% of your time on the customer and the product and everything, they were like, no, don't want that. What if we built a shared IT platform inside Amazon so we could help ourselves invent, and we won't be reliant on external services or external IT providers who usually say, well, you know, we can do that, but it's going to take this much time, this much money. I've endured that, everything from apps to infrastructure. External IT providers are very important, and they invent a lot of things, but if you can be in control of your own destiny while not inventing things that are like blocking and tackling and regular stuff, you're in a much better position. So they get together, and there was 57 people that were selected by Andy Jassy. Andy Jassy, the guy that's just been named that in the third quarter of 2021, as we film this, is going to be made CEO of Amazon as a whole, while Jeff Bezos steps back to kind of an executive chairman role. We're going to find out how Andy earned that promotion that he's about to get this year. So he's got 57 people together thinking about this platform, and they said, let's just do it. So Andy Jassy, and there's a couple other notable executives that were a part of it, such as this guy, CTO Alan Vermeulen, and this guy, Tom Kalalia, which was actually Amazon's first CISO. They all got together under this guy, Andy Jassy, to be the core leadership team that would ultimately build AWS. So those are among the 57 people and core leaders. So this wasn't off in the corner. This was Jeff Bezos and people at the top of the company, the CISO, and Andy Jassy named to the team, and away they go. So this wasn't just a bunch of people in the corner, engineers. This was at the top of the company, Andy Jassy with those senior executives to launch what would become AWS. Well, In 2006, just a couple years later, they announced S3 and EC2. They said, we want to give people the ability to have storage that's safe and secure and this infrastructure for ourselves internal, but also on the outside. At that time, Amazon was only $10 billion in revenue. And these yellow numbers here are the Amazon revenue. So let's go take a look at the Amazon revenue and then step back into the case study to look what was going on with AWS. So this is all happening in 2006. Amazon's a $10 billion company. That's significant. Last year, they were a $386 billion company. But even at this time, Jeff Bezos is like, wow, we're public, we're on the stock market, we get all these good things going on. He was not satisfied. So they are driving forward. The next year, 14, then 19, 24, 34, 48, 61, 74, 88, 107. So 10 times growth from 05, 6, 8 to 10 billion to 15, where they cross 100 billion. And these pink stars here are 100 billion markers. So they would take 10 years to get to their first 100 billion, 3 years to get to over 200 billion, and 2 years to get to 386 billion. They almost blew right past it and hit 400 billion that year. Huge, huge, huge. So we can see the growth of Amazon. And if you look back and you see what's going on with Amazon stock, and let's take a look here at this Amazon stock chart. As you can see, if you go back to 2005 all the way to 2021, look at the growth of this. It sort of mirrors it. It is the everything store. There was a famous book by that title that came out. So here we have Amazon all the way up to, $1 trillion company. And they're not just heading to Mars, which was where Elon Musk says he's going to be taking people. I remember he launched that rocket with the car on it and the astronaut suit that was in it. They're not heading there. They're going to Pluto. A couple years ago, I coined a phrase and I said, if it's Amazon, your ass is gone. Meaning that if they decide to get in your space, forget about it. And that, I shared that with a lot of friends and said, look, if they decide to enter a market space, look out. Well, now let's step back. Let's go back here. We've announced this in 2006. We see what's going to happen to Amazon. Now let's see what happens here. Well, they come along here and they're from 6 to 12 is 6 years, and suddenly AWS was $1 billion company inside Amazon. Well, people were noticing that, but it's, Amazon itself was 48 and to 60 billion to 74 billion. So at the same time, that was a small number, and Amazon had a lot of other things going on. Well, they did their first conference for Amazon Web Services in 2012 called reInvent. I believe it was in Las Vegas. Is that right, Paul? Las Vegas?
That was Las Vegas, Tom.
Las Vegas. And so, by the way, Amazon was doubling down on AWS. So maybe Las Vegas is the right place to announce you're doubling down. Well, they had people from 190 countries, 6,000 people from 190 companies there, and Reed Hastings from what is that? Who's that?
That's Netflix.
That's right. That's Netflix. Reed Hastings saying Netflix is going to be on AWS. Done deal, decision made. It's going to be on AWS. And by the way, later Amazon would be having Amazon Video where you could rent videos too, so they would compete with Netflix, but Netflix was on that platform. So here you have a massive company that's changing the game in streaming, and you can check out the Streaming Wars case study, which is Disney Plus last week as well. And they're on stage saying, this is what we're doing. Andy Jassy, Reed Hastings, Netflix is on AWS. So suddenly big trees are starting to fall in the forest toward AWS, knocking down big customers. Well, 2013, it's 3 billion, but that's 3 of 74. Well, what's 3 of 74? Well, 10% be 7.4, 5%, suddenly it's 5%. Now we're talking. We have a major, conference that identifies it. We also see what's happened here. EC2 is out. There's a ton of things that are happening here. And this is really the crux of the case study. It took them 6 years to be an overnight sensation. From 04 to 10, they really were working hard. And so over those 6 years, You had Andy Jassy, and not Heinz 57, but the Jassy 57, coming together and building just this fantastic support for Amazon. And if you don't think the Amazon growth was powered in part by the fact that they no longer had to rely on anyone on the outside infrastructure, they were building their own, expanding their own with data centers around the world, you're not paying attention. This was fueled by this. So let's see where they went from that $3 billion to $4.6 billion after that conference. Well, they go to 7.8. Then they go to 12 billion in 2016. They go to 17 billion. Now that's a 1 year. They're adding in 1 year here 5 billion. Just a couple years ago, they were right at 5 billion. And now they've added that between 16 and 17. So when you look at small numbers and you back into case studies, a lot of times I like to look at the size of company's revenue just 5 years prior, and suddenly you realize that they basically added the company that they were. If you think about it that way, that's what people ask me a lot about. How do you do case studies? What do you think about? What you're thinking? And my point is, that's what I look for when they added themselves to themselves. Well, in 17, that's 5. They added another 8. Now they're at 25. They've added 8. 3 years prior here. Look at the pattern that's happening. This is a sign of acceleration and momentum, and also, ardent success, because something else here. They announced 15 and 16 were profitable. So they're now announcing that after all the investment and everything, this is a profitable division. Just how profitable? Holy moly. Hang on to your shorts. Here we go. 2017, 17 billion revenue. 25 billion in 18, 35 billion in 19, 45 billion in 2020. Remember I told you Amazon was 386, almost $400 billion revenue on their own? Watch what happens. This 45 billion contained 65% of the profits, $13.5 billion in profits, 65% of the profits in this entire 386 million, 65% of the profits were generated by the 45 billion right here. Let that sink in for a minute. Who would you have to be the next CEO of Amazon? If I was on the board, I wouldn't give Jeff Bezos a choice. I say, Jeff, the guy that did this, put him in charge of the whole stack. And that's what's happened. Andy Jassy is going to be CEO of Amazon. And if you don't think that what has been built here, a $50 billion IT services company, is significant, that's generating 65% of the profits for Amazon, and you don't see how that is driving stock price, you're not paying attention. Well, just how dominant are they? Well, why don't we take a look back at everybody else? Let's just go in the last 5 years, which I'm going to line up with the revenue right down here. Over the last 5 years, AWS doubled from here to here. This is almost doubling from here to here, yet their market share has stayed stable at about 33%. Actually, 31 to 33, 35, depending on who you look at. As a source of market share information for cloud. So this is Cloud Internet as a Service, IaaS, market share among the big players. So here you've got Amazon here. Well, if you're 30 to 31, 33, 35% market share and it's growing like this, that can only mean that the total market for cloud is growing. And last year was a banner year for cloud growth of cloud services. Let me give you an example of cloud services. Zoom. Very big during the shutdown year of 2020 due to COVID. Everybody's using Zoom. Zoom's at home. I also did a case study on that. You can take a look at and understand how Zoom got through some security issues and things that were there. But that is a perfect example of what was blowing up during 2020 for cloud-based services. And guess who has taken a big chunk of the pie? Amazon. So to go from 17 to 45 over these years, and yet your market share only goes 31 to 33, it means the whole pie is exploding, because 45 billion is now 31%, over here 35%, give or take, and 17 billion was 31%. Get it? So the whole pie is getting bigger. Well, what was happening to everybody else during that time? This nice man, Satya Nadella, who became CEO of Microsoft just a couple years ago, they have almost doubled their market share from 10% here to 20%. But then Google only went from about 7% to 9%. Meanwhile, IBM has gone from 9% down to 5%, so they're kind of lost. Think, IBM, think about what are you supposed to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? And you're certainly not competing in the modern world. Long ago, the Biz Doc dad was part of IBM, and if he was still alive today, he'd be very, very disappointed in what you've done to yourselves. Well, what about the others? There's Rackspace and a lot of others that are in that. Well, they have gone from over 40% down to here. And you can see Microsoft has taken probably the lion's share of that share. Right now, it's an AWS followed by Microsoft, with Google and IBM below 10%, and all others, including Rackspace, here. So you can see what's going on. AWS, forget about the other line. When you take that off, because I put everybody in that, so now we can see that it's a two-horse race with AWS and Microsoft, led by Satya Nadella, that are driving forward for the future of cloud services, to own that for you and for me and entrepreneurs around the world that are starting new companies. Now, remember, Microsoft's also in the Azure platform, and I could do a case study in the future and talk about what all that means, whereas AWS is, S3, EC2, and a variety of things like that. So you can see what's happened here with the market share, and you can see what's happened here with the success. Well, what are some lessons that we can take away from AWS? Let's step back. These lessons do apply to you and me, entrepreneurs. And I love to say it, whether you're operating a t-shirt company in Berlin or something more significant in the technology sector. First of all, if you can help yourself and then sell to the world, it adds another product to what you do. But you need to think about why you're doing it. For instance, if you were selling internet, web services, and you were building templates, and then you could sell the templates to the world, there's a great example of maybe one business births another business. As you can see here, they built this internally to focus on the customer, and ultimately they sold it to you and me. 6 years later, they had 6,000 people from 190 countries at their own conference. So if you can help yourself with what you invent and then sell to the world, it is a very fortuitous, magical thing, because innovation starts at home. If you are attempting to run a company and you're going to build your own email service, that's foolish. You've got Outlook, you've got Gmail, you have established things there. But when you're looking at the infrastructure for your product, and there's a part of that, beware of reliance. If you're relying on something on the outside that is a key part of your product, you are missing an opportunity to innovate. And let me give you an example. Let's say you're building a product that's going to be installed in enterprises, business-to-business sales. Well, if they all have different password systems, it would be foolish for you to use anything other than Okta, which is a single sign-on technology, Okta. So why invent that? But the underlying core that makes your product, guess what we found out with Zoom? Zoom didn't invent the hosting they were on, but they invented the video and the sharing and the multi-streaming that they were able to put together on that. Check out my Zoom case study as well to see what I mean. So the core of your product, beware of relying on somebody else, because your development as a product will be stuck on how fast that supplier, that vendor, that service partner innovates. Which is why I say innovation starts at home on the key things. And through that innovation, if you help yourself, you can sell the world. Take a look at what Patrick Bet-David and PHP Agency, they announced the Bamboo platform. That platform may be available in the insurance industry someday. Why? Because they solve key problems at PHP and they're driving forward with that, and it may be an opportunity to expand. As of right now, as the press release shows, Bamboo is now available to those PHP agents that get more benefit out of partnering with PHP. There's a great example from Patrick Bet-David, the founder right here of Valuetainment. And so that's not surprising with a guy like Patrick Bet-David, a serial entrepreneur. In terms of AWS, you can see, I believe this is a phenomenal story where Andy Jassy and 57 people changed the world for cloud and internet as a service, IT services, and put himself in a position to be delivering 65% of the profits to Amazon. And now he's going to be CEO of the entire company. A compelling story. Well, that's what I think. I want to know what you think about AWS. Leave me a comment down below. I'll answer as many as I can. And when you're there, please subscribe to Valuetainment Economics and hit the bell. You'll get notifications every time there's a new case study from me and other great content here on Valuetainment Economics. If you like this case study, by the way, check out this Biz Doc classic. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Until next time, I'm Tom Ellsworth with the Biz Doc, and I hope I left you better than I found you.